This card might look simple, but we packed a lot into it. Soft stenciling with dye inks, a layered ink-blended background, alcohol marker coloring with olos, stamping, die cutting, sequins, and of course, a bear holding flowers. It's cozy, dimensional, and it came together with a lot of fun, and a few surprises along the way. I've been practicing with alcohol markers lately, and to be quite honest, I wasn't planning on filming this card. I just sat down to play with the Quokka Flowers Stamp and Die set from Kat Scrappiness and the Love is in the Air stencil. I had just gotten my Olo markers, and I'll be honest with you, I had no clue what the heck I was doing with them. I'm still new to alcohol markers and was feeling a little vulnerable and wasn't sure anyone would want to watch me fumble through it. I've had Copic markers for years, but never really used them. Something about the Olos just made me want to try, so I made 5 little Quokka bears to practice coloring and shading with the Olos to see what I could do. The first one was a hot mess, super splotchy, but the last one, I started to get the hang of it. As I started pulling together the pieces, stamping the flower bouquets, I realized I was actually having fun. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't the worst either, and thought, okay, let's just hit record and see where this goes. Hi. I'm Jeannie Scott. Welcome to the Upper Craft Room, where we make a mess and create something beautiful out of it. This is actually where I decided to turn on the camera. I'm stamping the flowers with Memento black ink so that I could color with Olo markers without worrying about smudging. For the Olo marker colors, I chose a dark pink, a light pink, a yellow, and a green. And I'll have the numbers listed below just in case you want to try them. Honestly, if I could do it again, I'd probably go a little darker with the pinks and the yellows. They showed up better in person than they did on camera, but I think a little more contrast would have helped. The stems gave me a little bit of trouble with such tiny spaces to color, so I used a really light hand and just the tip of the marker, barely any pressure at all, and I just took it slow. When I did go outside the lines, which definitely did happen, the zero marker came in handy. It pushed the color right back in where I needed it to be. That thing is magic. Now, I'm not a professional colorist by any means. I've played with Copics here and there, but it never really clicked with me. So this is very new territory for me, especially doing it on video. But in the end, I actually like how it turned out enough that I used 1 bouquet on this card and saved the other 4 for future cards. And this felt like a win. And next up, it's time to cut out the flowers using the Quokka Flowers die set. Once the flowers were done, I moved on to the background. I grabbed some Hammer Hill 100-pound cardstock and cut this into 4 quarters, measuring 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 for my panels. It's super smooth and takes ink beautifully, which makes it perfect for both ink blending and alcohol markers. It's one of those versatile cardstocks that just works across mediums. I used the Love is in the Air stencil from Kat Scrappiness. I thought the stencil was perfect for the card that I'm making and super cute. And I'm placing it exactly where I want it on top of the cardstock using the sticky mat to hold it down. Here I'm pulling out the medium-sized Spellbinders blending brushes. And here I'm deciding on what dye inks I'm going to use. I am using the Gina K Design dye inks, and I landed on Ocean Mist, Peach Bellini, Blue Sky, Light Carnation, Light Lilac, and Light Orchid. I didn't want the background to be too bold. I've learned that every card needs to have one thing to be in charge, either your background or your focal point. In this case, I wanted the Quokka bear and the flowers to be the stars, so the background just needs to support it. Subtle, soft, and not trying to steal the spotlight. And it turned out so delicate and pretty. I thought about adding black splatter, but I decided to keep it clean and light. It has a sweet feel. Perfect for a hospital card, a baby shower, maybe even a wedding shower, depending on the sentiment. I'm just softening the last little bit here, and that's it. The colors blended together so much better than I expected. Soft, but still cheerful. And now for the best part, it's time to pull off that stencil. I love this moment every single time. You get that clean reveal and all that soft blending comes to life. So here I'm using my Tool-in-One tool. This is an awesome tool. This is very old, but you can get a new one. And I'm using that spatula to help me get it off of the sticky mat. So I carefully pulled it off the sticky mat, and yep, it's even better than I hoped. The edges are crisp, the colors are soft, and it's got that dreamy, almost storybook feel to it. I'm bringing it up close to the camera so you can really see it. This is why I love stenciling with dye inks on smooth cardstock. You don't need fancy techniques, you just need a soft hand, a few good brushes, and the right palette. It's simple, but it adds so much. I'm going to clean up real quick. I like to do that before the next step. That way I don't have a mess all around me while I'm working. I'll be right back. It's time to start pulling everything together. Once I had my background finished and the Quokka bear picked out that I was going to use, it was time to add the bouquet to the Quokka bear's paws. They're cut just enough to tuck something small in there like this flower bouquet, and it fits perfectly. I slid the bouquet in, adjusted it to where it looked natural. That tiny detail makes such a difference, and it really brings that Quokka bear to life. This die set is the perfect match for this layout. Then I placed that little Quokka bear on top of the stenciled background to get a feel for the layout. It was cute, but it felt like something was still missing. So I grabbed the wonky stitch rectangle die set from the Kat Scrappiness haul, and I cut the panel down using the largest die. That added just the right structure and a little whimsy. Look how cute that turned out. I couldn't be happier with the outcome. But something still felt like it was missing. Then I remembered this purple ink blended panel that I had tossed into a background bin weeks ago. I had cut a butterfly out of it for another project, so there was a chunk missing. But I was betting I could make it work if I hid that part. And when I laid the wonky stitched rectangle piece stencil background on top of it, I knew that that was the ticket. Next, I grabbed a sheet of Res Kid, if that's how you even pronounce it, of Res Kid white 125-pound cardstock and cut it down to an A2 card base. Then I scored it at 5.5 for a top folding card using my Score Buddy and burnished the fold with my Teflon bone folder, the one that I got from Kat Scrappiness, so I wouldn't get that shiny crease you sometimes get with the plastic ones. I love this cardstock. It's thick, it's smooth, and sturdy enough to handle all the layering without feeling flimsy. I went to assemble the card and realized that I still needed to cut that purple background panel down to size. I flipped it around to see if the lighter purple would look better at the top, but the cutout was too obvious that way, so I flipped it back around and went with the darker shade at the top, which completely covered the missing spot. It was just enough cardstock to work with, and once I trimmed it down using the Spellbinders Card Creator A2 Matting Basics bead die, the second one from the largest, it gave me the perfect layer. The colors matched beautifully and it pulled everything together, and no one's ever going to know that that cutout, that missing butterfly, is underneath the background layer. It's a total time saver. Okay, I think it's finally time to start assembling this card. So once I had everything laid out the way I liked it, I started putting it together. I used the Genie K dot runner to adhere the stenciled background panel. I love that it gives me a second to reposition before it fully sticks. And by the way, I have all of these supplies linked down below in the description, so if there's anything that you're interested in, you can just look there and be sure to grab it. I know how frustrating that can be when you see something you want and you don't have any idea where to go to get it. Then I added some foam tape behind the bear to give it a little lift and help him stand out from the background. It makes such a difference. That tiny bit of dimension brings him forward just enough so that he doesn't get lost in the soft colors behind him. And let's be real, after all that coloring, I wanted him to feel like the main character. Before I pressed anything down, I took a second to line everything up. The ink blended background, the grounding layer with the stenciled hearts, I lined them both up to the A2 card base, and the bear holding the bouquet. I just wanted to make sure the layers felt balanced and that everything had a place. But the bouquet, that part was a little tricky. I didn't want it to lay flat against his face. It just looked a little smushed. So I grabbed a thin foam dot and carefully tucked it behind the flowers, just enough to float the bouquet slightly in front of him, like he's naturally holding them forward. Now I'm adding foam tape just to give it a little added pop, and at first I thought I'd place the bear in the lower left corner. That was the plan, but once I cut down the panel using the wonky stitch rectangle die, the balance shifted. The corner just didn't work anymore, so I moved the bear to the center instead to keep him the focal point. Once I had that figured out, it was time to pick a sentiment. I pulled out the coordinating stamp set, Quokka Flowers, to pick a sentiment that would fit the space and the vibe. After looking at the sentiments and what I thought would work the best, I chose a flower a day keeps the frown away. I mean, come on, how perfect is that? I was looking for something that fit the space and the mood, and this checked both boxes. I used my Misty to stamp the sentiment just so I could line it up exactly where I wanted it, because by this point I was not about to mess anything up. I inked it up with VersaFine Clair in black. This is one of my go-to inks when I want a crisp, bold impression on the first try. It stamped beautifully, and honestly, this sentiment was the perfect touch. After I stamped the sentiment, I went to grab the coordinating die, and I want to share something with you that I picked up from watching someone else's video, and it's honestly saved me so much time. I keep all my sentiment dies lined up on the magnetic sheet in the same layout as they appear on the acetate from the stamp set. That way, when I'm ready to cut one out, I'm not guessing which die goes with which sentiment. I can just glance at it and grab exactly what I need. Total game changer, especially when you're mid-project and don't want to break the momentum. After I stamped the sentiment, I went ahead and put the stamp back onto the acetate sheet right away. I always like to do that before I forget or lose track of where I put the stamp. Then I used the coordinating die to cut the sentiment out. Once I had that done, I placed the die right back on the magnetic sheet in the exact same spot it came from. I don't have to play which die fits which stamp. This way everything's ready to go. Next time I reach for it, no guessing, and my future self will thank me. To give the sentiment a little more presence on the card, I cut out a couple of extras and stacked them together. It's one of my favorite ways to add subtle dimension without using foam. Just good old-fashioned layering. I use Barely Art precision glue to line them up and stick them together one by one, being careful to make sure the edges stayed aligned. Once I glued the sentiment stack together and laid it on the card, I still felt like it needed just a little bit more lift. So I grabbed a few of my super thin foam dots and popped them up behind the entire piece. It gave it that perfect in-between dimension, not bulky, just enough to cast a soft shadow. There's something kind of satisfying about this part. It feels like the finishing work that really pulls everything together. Once it was all stacked and dry, I added the final glued piece right on the card front. It gives that sentiment that extra bit of weight so it doesn't get lost behind the bear on the background. And to finish it off, I added a few teal sequins. Because of course I did. I mean, it wouldn't be one of my cards without a little sparkle somewhere, right? At this point, I sat back and just looked at it. It was so much fun to put together despite my alcohol marker disabilities. I went into this card just hoping to make something decent, and somehow, even with all the missteps along the way, it turned out really sweet. That's my favorite kind of project. Not perfect, but personal and fun all the way through. This whole card was built around the Quokka Flowers stamp and coordinating die set from Kat Scrappiness, and I've got to say, this was such a fun one to work with. But what's really exciting is that Kat Scrappiness has been expanding the Quokka Bear collection. I already have the Crafty Quokka stamp and die set, and I can't wait to play around with that one. These little bears are just so much fun to have, and they have so much personality, and I love that there are now even more ways to use them. We also use the wonky stitched rectangle dies and the Love is in the Air stencil from Kat Scrappiness. These links are listed below, as well as all the other supplies that I use in this video, just in case you've been eyeing any of these products. Check the description below for a full supply list and card recipe. Everything I used in this video is listed there. If you have any ideas on how to use this stamp set, drop it below. I'd love to hear your ideas. And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching this video, and I very much appreciate you hanging out with me. Like and subscribe and hit the bell for more tutorials just like this one.